Hello and welcome to Trust Your Glitter podcast. This is Christy. I'm excited to be here. I am going to be on audio only for as long as needed, and I'll slowly start to talk about why as I go along with my podcast. But I wanted to enter this week, October 8th through October 15th, with some astrological gems, because we have a lot of astrological gifts and also lessons that are showing themselves to us. And we've been preparing for this moment. We've been preparing for this time. October is a very pivotal time for us. And we have 2 eclipses in October. This one coming up on the 14th is an annular new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Libra. It's going to be very helpful for us. It's also going to be very much loaded with lessons for us. So this is going to be a time where we're going to have to really sit with ourselves and really think about what we want going on into the next realm of our journey. Now, I already know, these eclipses kick up weeks beforehand. So I've been talking about this on all my tarot videos and podcasts. It's not like the day of the eclipse is the only day that these eclipses influence us. It's a magnetism. And for many, on the date of the eclipse, things can go down or things can shift. But really, it's an era shifts. And we get this, pretty much every year. We get these little times where, eras shift for us. And they're not little, but it's like these, in the grand zoom out of life, eclipses give us those moments. This is when the divorce contract comes through, the papers come through. This is when the house, gets sold. This is when, we find the new property. This is when the baby, you take your test and it's positive. Like, these are the sort of things that eclipses really do bring into our lives for us. We have to let them be. We have to let them be themselves. We have to let the eclipses eclipse for us. You can't control them. I know there's a lot of spiritual influencers that say you can't manifest during an eclipse. It depends on your definition of manifestation, because an eclipse is when, the person crosses over. This is when the baby is born. This is, the big life stuff. And to me, that is manifestation. You can't will something. You just kind of let the eclipse do its thing. But you also have to live your life. And that's the same for Mercury retrograde. Like, you've got to just live your life through these shifts. So I know that the online spiritual content world will say, don't, do your word magic on an eclipse. But, it depends on how you view these things. I view it as it's magnetic manifestation in many ways. It's you're allowing the universe to really supercharge you. So on October the 8th, as we look at the transits ahead, Venus enters the sign of Virgo. And Venus in Virgo is kind of concluding this long lesson of, we had Venus in Leo, Venus went retrograde in Leo, and now Venus left shadow in Leo. And as she enters Virgo, there's a lot more practicality to how she's looking at life. And I think it's interesting because a lot of there's this shift right before the eclipse. We have Venus entering Virgo on the 8th. On the 10th of October, we have Pluto going direct. Pluto has been in retrograde since May 1st. Pluto went retrograde on May 1st at 0 degrees Aquarius and re-entered the sign of Capricorn. And we have been sitting in this lesson over and over again. And Venus was directly involved with Pluto throughout her Venus retrograde. And even last week we had some yods in the sky. We still have those yods active a little bit. Venus in a quincunx with Pluto and Neptune in Pisces, there was this dream we were working on, and that dream was very destined, and that dream was something we really, really had to assess on how we express ourselves through this dream. My solution to that was I started doing the Artist's Way for the second time around. I have 10, 11, 12, 3 more weeks to go on it. And it's been a very helpful journey for me. The Artist's Way, I definitely recommend it. And for anybody who's kind of shifting through, like, finding your creative vibe, like the Artist's Way, like, you can pick it up anytime and just start. There's no rhyme, there's no rules to it or anything other than being yourself, writing your morning pages and doing the tasks every week. And it's a very constructive activity. It's very Venus Virgo. It's very practical. It's very routine related as we go through these shifts. And Pluto will be leaving the shadow zone on February 1st, 2024. So the thing about this is the transformation and the transmutation that is going along with Pluto doesn't stop. There are steps here. There are learning, like, to really, really dig yourself out of the gunk. And as we see a societal shift with Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, we also are experiencing this internally. Our internal systems are saying that certain things can no longer go with us in our lives. And the other part of it is what is coming through. Like, we're in kind of a congealed stage for the caterpillar into the butterfly. And in that particular case, I say that, 2023 is almost like you're taking a class, and it's like, the 101 part of the class. And then 2024 is like the 102 part of the class. So, like, these are the things that we're going through this year. And if you hear extraneous noise, I'm sitting on a cabin porch right now, and there will be planes, probably low, flying occasionally over. But I am sitting in nature as I record this podcast. On October 12th, so we have Venus entering Virgo today. That is the 8th. October 12th, Mars, who's been in the sign of Libra, is entering the sign of Scorpio. And I find this super, super, again, the synchronicity of 2023 is so incredible. And at the same time, it's kind of like uncanny, because it's like, okay, so this whole week we're leading up to this eclipse. And even before the eclipse, we have Mars entering the sign of Scorpio, 0 degrees Scorpio. So the dynamic of Mars and Venus is actually very harmonious because they're in a sextile to one another, really like that. They're kind of in like friendship signs. If you think about, Virgo wants practicality and routine, and Mars and Scorpio is like, let's really melt it down to its core. Let's really get in there. And I think it's also symbolic that, Scorpio, ruled by Pluto and Mars, as Pluto goes direct, means there is a step forward. So this week is going to be like a grandiose event for a lot of people. If you haven't already had your eclipse story start up, you're going to have it start up, especially with the fact that, the other part of this week is that Mars is square Pluto at the beginning of the week. And it's also going to affect us with the eclipse, because like that energy kind of sticks with us throughout the week. So Mars square Pluto is like assessing, what's the situation here? And I don't dislike squares. This is one of the hardest squares, Mars square Pluto, because Mars wants action, Pluto wants transformation. Mars in this particular case, this is with Mars in Libra squaring Pluto and Capricorn. So it's cardinal. So it's like one person's thoughts, opinions, and the other person's thoughts, opinions. It's very political. It's very authoritative. It's very much pointing to like this asshole over here. It's very much like, it's like watching a debate, it's watching a political debate, and it's seeing how it affects the masses. It's seeing how it affects, how other people live their lives. And this is something that is very helpful as we head through the week, because on the 10th, Venus is opposite Saturn. Venus at that point has moved into Virgo, opposite Saturn in Pisces, the practical aspect to the dream, really bringing this dream to reality, but also like facing the challenges of like, well, what paperwork needs signed? What hoops do I need to jump through? There's a lot of patience here with this week. There's a lot of patience with some of the hiccups that can happen with eclipse energies. There's a lot of patience that can be like, okay, so you get the thing, but then you need to wait on the signature. Things like that. On the 11th, we have Chiron in Aries, who is retrograde, opposite the sun in Libra. This is also influential with our eclipse and will be connected to the eclipse. So just also note that this is not isolated to the 10th, but it is in direct opposition, and this is that asteroid of, Chiron is the asteroid of the wounded healer, looking at your personal ego. Now, if it's your personal ego related to being hard on yourself, especially with a Saturn-Venus opposition, this can be where you're really, really tough on yourself and where you really feel like, you can't get it right. You can't be perfect all the time. And really judge that situation when we look at this Libra energy from a scale of like, can you really just zoom back a little bit and kind of be really compassionate with yourself? Because in this particular case, like with the opposition here, and this opposition is connecting with the eclipse, how would you mother yourself through the situation? How would you really put like a ton of love on it? Because my guess is with the transits, you're being way too harsh. I just know it. Like, I can feel it. Like, the oppositions are giving us this sort of like polarity, and the eclipses are giving us polarity. So if you're an ASMR person, like, I gotta drink water. I'm out in the desert and I'm losing my voice. Okay. Here we are, ASMR in the desert. So on the 12th, Mercury is quincunx to Jupiter. Now, Mercury being in Libra, Jupiter being in Taurus, we have this Venusian influence. Venus being the women in our lives as well, being our sacred feminine. I want to say that I think it was Heather Ainsworth who pointed out that the conjunction of Isis to this eclipse is important, the asteroid. And she is the goddess of, in a lot of ways, she is like the divine mother. So when I look at this quincunx, I look at this as like a divine mother aspect. Like, how would you serve your highest, like self, your highest internal conversation to manifesting? And I know that we're saying manifesting here with an eclipse, controversial, towards manifesting the future. And I think it's actually synchronistic, because this week in my artist's way, there is kind of like a visualization element. And let me just kind of take the pages over. So I think this quincunx is about prioritization. And I think a lot of the prioritization is like kind of looking at things from like yearly, monthly, weekly, and daily. So it's kind of saying, yes, maybe right now you're not getting the result, that pinnacle result. But with this quincunx here, with Mercury, and your mind is on it. Your mind is on the pinnacle. Your mind is like, yeah, but I just need this thing to be balanced. And the quincunx to Jupiter, the expansive planet, who is also in retrograde, in Taurus is like, yeah, but it's gonna take a lot of faith, and it's gonna take a lot of trust, and it's gonna take a little bit slower because Jupiter is in the sign of Taurus, and this is earthy energy. So I think the Divine Mother energy, as I look at this chart, is kind of, the chart of the eclipse, the chart of the week, the energies of the week. We have air energy, cognitive, earth energy, very visceral, very feeling, oppositions to water energy, very much allowing compassion to rule you, music, art, getting your hands in dirty, letting yourself really feel the earth. And on the 13th, we have this beautiful trine between Mars and Saturn. So earlier we had an opposition between Venus and Saturn. Now Mars is in such a harmonious aspect with Scorpio to a trine in Pisces in Saturn. So that water compassionate element, even with kind of a stingray sign of Scorpio, is actually a little bit more tame right now. So if you are more of a Martian person listening to this, you might be in your feels this week, and that's totally okay. If you're more like identifying like divine masculine energy, you might start to like really listen to nostalgic music or look at pictures or writings that really connect you, or rewatch something that really gets you into that deep vibe of creative force. And I love it, the masculine creative force this week. Oh, it's nice. The feminine creative force is just like divine. Wow. Like she is like here to shine. But where I'm seeing the balance here is in movement of like shift and finding one another. And I think it's really nice because there's like this dance before we head into the lunar eclipses on the way, and I'll get into that when as time goes along. But on the 14th, which is eclipse day, we have Mercury opposite Chiron. Now, again, this is influential throughout the eclipse, but I want to say that it's exact on the eclipse date that Mercury is facing Chiron at 17 degrees Aries retrograde, and Mercury is 17 degrees Libra. Now, let's get into the chart. So, here's the eclipse. It's at 1:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it'll be at 21 degrees Libra. So we have that sun and moon conjunction, and Mercury is super close by. Isis, the asteroid, is super close by, 22 degrees. Mercury at 17 degrees. And this is quincunx to Uranus. So, there is a surprise here. There is a sudden turn, a sudden change, a sudden shift. Yes. That while you're working on your dream, while you're working on things, you also have this other thing. You also have this other, but I do feel abundance here. I do feel like there's a connection here. Lilith, I love, is up with Venus this week. I didn't mention this, but with the eclipse, Venus ruled eclipse. Venus is in the sign of Virgo, and Miss Lilith is right there with her. So they have not lost connection even as, Venus enters a different sign. They were hand in hand through our Leo season, with Venus being in Leo for so long, and then Venus went retrograde and kind of left Lilith and then came back, and they're still kind of walking hand in hand in the sky. And Lilith's job is to basically tell Venus, you can give the middle finger. You can to certain things. You can say no. You can say hell no. And sometimes no is your greatest sentence here, especially if we're having oppositions to Saturn. So this eclipse is really nice. I'm very much appreciative of it. That North Node in Aries close to Chiron. I'm not going to say they're conjunct, but I'm saying because Mercury is so close to the eclipse is at 21 degrees. The south node in Libra is at 24 degrees. So I'm going to say there's an influential element of Chiron conjunct the north node at 24 degrees Aries. So that means there's a task here of taking control of elements of your life where you maybe at a time felt like you couldn't stand up for yourself. So let the eclipses eclipse. Let the eclipses be themselves. This next month is going to be a very important time. Lots of people are moving. Lots of people are redirecting. Lots of jobs being changed. Lots of relationships being shifted around. But it is a gift. Overall, this eclipse is giving us momentum. It's giving us the ability to speak up in situations where the dynamics are off kilter, especially on a grander scale. But this could be at your job, especially with Pluto and Capricorn moving forward. This could be not taking that boss's abuse anymore. Limiting your hours at work, like all these sorts of things are all part of the eclipse. And I do want to say with that Sun quincunx Uranus, that influences us to the end of the week, the 15th. You might not find out something until you find it out. So it could just be like you show up and you get the goods right there. You're like, oh, that is exactly what I needed to get me off to the next place. And especially, like, for example, if this is work related, you might not find out some information until you get it at the last second. And that might change your mind. Especially with the mental aspect of this eclipse being in Libra. Libra has to kind of be shaken up to make a big change. Libra will stick around for the hard stuff. And that's the other thing is like, you shake a Libra up enough, that's when they're going to say, hell no. So just trust that this eclipse is really bringing a lot of helpful information to us. And the card that I picked before the reading was the 9 of Wands, which is like, you got to keep even going through this. When times get tough, you've got all that it takes to go through the hard things. You can do it. You can figure it out. You can make it work. And that is, I think, a very Chiron and Aries card as well. Because it's like, yes, this eclipse is looking at Chiron and saying, you went through all of that, but you still made it here. You still did it. You still showed up. You still showed up for yourself and the relationships that are important in your life. And this eclipse will show you which relationships stay, which go, and which get reprioritized. So thank you for listening to Trust Your Glitter. I'm Belich, and have a great week.